So our next performer is David W. Berner. He's a memoirist whose personal stories tell all of our stories. His memoirs reflect on our collective relationships and how those experiences link us to the world we share. From stories of fathers and sons to road trips, travel memoir, pets, and music, David's books are mirrors of our common human experience. He has written several award-winning memoirs and 2 novels. More at his website, www.berner.com. Storytelling has been a part of David's life since his days as a young boy, delivering the Pittsburgh Press newspaper. He began telling his own stories and the stories of others as a reporter for numerous radio stations, including freelance work at National Public Radio, and more recently for CBS in Chicago. He has been the writer-in-residence for the Jack Kerouac Project in Orlando, where he was privileged to live and work at the Kerouac House in Orlando for 2.5 months. He later was honored with the writer-in-residence position at the Ernest Hemingway Birthplace Home in Oak Park, Illinois. So please welcome David.
Thank you very much. Great stories here, right? Very great. It's really good. Really good. I'm just going to move this in just a little bit. Okay. So, yeah, I delivered newspapers. Are there paper boys anymore? I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, so I used to steal away on the curb and read the paper and realize that I was late delivering papers. So, my books have been about a lot of things, as was said. I have a new book out that I wanted to read from. It's coming out in June officially. It's called The Consequence of Stars. And it's a memoir, and it's a series of linked essays about the concept of home, about what it means for all of us, what home may mean to us, either metaphorically or physically, whatever that is. So a couple of those pieces have been published in other places, but they came together as a book, and I wanted to read something from that tonight. It's modified from what's in the book a little bit so it fits into our format. This is called Apples in the Chimney. Our home sat on the steepest part of the street. So from our side porch, the house next door sat below the neighbor's chimney and directly at eye level, only 4 arms lengths away, and an inviting target. Down the 3 back steps from the porch in the middle of a patio, the brick patio, grew an apple tree. It flowered in the spring and bore fruit in the summer. In August, the apples fell often, littering the ground and attracting bees. My mother would ask my sister and me to gather up the ones without worms or bruises and place them in brown bags so she could make some pies. A bite from those green apples would make your tongue curl. So my mother had to add several cups of sugar to the recipe to produce an edible dessert. The remaining apples, the cold-shaped ones, the odd-shaped ones, and the ones plucked by the kids and bruised by the worms, ended up in a plastic bucket my friends and I kept out of sight below the far wall of the porch. There were the tossable ones, we called them, the apple bombs, Mother Nature's baseballs. You have to go underhand with this, my friend Joey said, so it falls right in the hole. My toss was an overhand lob, like the one a pitcher might throw to the first baseman after catching a soft grounder. But this toss, however, was forgettable. It was close, but not good enough, hitting the rim of the chimney, the top of it careening into the tall bushes between the houses. I chose another apple from the bucket. It was smallish, but fit nicely in my hand. Leaning over the porch railing, I pitched it with a big arc. It struck the top rim, bouncing to the opposite rim, up into the air, and falling to the shingled roof, hanging up for a moment, and then slowly beginning to roll. One revolution, and then the next, picking up speed toward the gutter and the neighbor's metal patio roof. Shit, Joey muttered. The apple hopped once, twice, and then on the third, it danced over the gutter and struck the metal roof. Bang! Joey ran. I grabbed the bucket and followed quickly toward the backyard. We ducked behind the big cherry tree, and we waited. Mr. McConaughey was likely at work, but Mrs. McConaughey stayed home, and she was most certainly in the house. We listened for the squeak of the rear screen door. Nothing. We waited some more. Nothing. We remained silent for several minutes, occasionally glancing at each other as if to assess one another's nerves. After what felt like an hour, but was really 5 minutes or so, Joey picked up the bucket of apples and both of us walked back to the porch. "Maybe we should go back to the overhand throw," Joey asked. Several days a week, our neighbor's chimney was the focus of our attention. It became such a regular pastime, several of my friends and I had begun keeping score. 1 point was awarded for every apple that made it down the chimney. The errant throws, the ones that crashed on the patio roof, were not that unusual. And although Mrs. McConaughey had not once come outside to investigate, we were taking no chances, knowing that someday she might. Mischief wasn't always the norm in my neighborhood. Still, we had our share. It was innocent stuff, really, but important and necessary for a lot of reasons. We stretched, found out how far we could go, how much we could face, how much we could get away with, how bad we could be without really being bad. We threw burning bags of dog shit on porches. We bought and lit illegal firecrackers. We burned plastic army men. We grew up model cars with M80s. We threw eggs at girls' bedroom windows. All of this happened between the ages of 9 and 15, including those apple in the chimney afternoons. In my senior year of high school, things got a little darker. 2 of my friends were in a film class. There was only 1 camera, so students took turns using it to make these short, amateurish little movies. On the weekend, we had the camera. We staged an arrest. My buddies played the cops, I played the perpetrator. We rode in my friend's car to South Park, this big, sprawling, leafy county preserve a few miles from the high school. They dropped me off along one of the park's winding roads, doubled back, and raced towards me, cutting me off with the car, jumping out, chasing me up a grassy hill. At the top of the hill, I was wrestled to the ground. They pretended to put handcuffs on me, dragged me to the car, threw me in the back seat. It was like a scene out of Hawaii Five-0, without the ocean and palm trees. My buddy, the car's owner, was also a volunteer fireman. You could be one at 18 years old in our town. In the back seat, he kept a yellow flashing light with a magnet on the top. He tossed it on the car's roof, and we sped off with roadside gravel spraying over the grass and the amber light flashing out to the world. The fake arrest was captured on film, and we were quite proud of our performances, boasting how it might be cool if someone saw everything and thought it was real. Besides that flashing light, a volunteer fireman also keeps a police scanner in his car. On the drive home, we heard the police alert for our own arrests. In a matter-of-fact dispatch, the voice over the scanner described the car: a green late model sedan, and 2 young males believed to be the abductors, and a 3rd male believed to have been taken against his will. In minutes, red lights flashed through the car's rear window. 2 police vehicles pulled us over and blocked our vehicle against the curb. Officers stood on either side of the late model sedan. One hand had his hand on his holstered revolver. "Step out of the car and put your hands on the hood," one cop demanded. We were frisked and sternly questioned. It took a lot to convince the officers that someone had seen what they had seen was not real. We were charged with disturbing the peace. The film class teacher had to go to the hearing to explain and get us off. I was not a punk. I got into a fist fight in the boys' locker room once, but no police were involved, just the school principal. I stuck a couple of cigarettes or 2. I downed a few beers. I hit a little weed. Still, there were worse things going on in our neighborhood in my teenage years. Teenage girls getting pregnant, drunk driving accidents, downers and speed, a physical fistfight between a dad and his son in the neighbor's front yard. My town was not immune to the ugly side. There were families with big problems: alcohol, rumors of husbands hitting wives, parents beating kids, fathers and mothers losing their jobs. There were divorces no one talked about. These chapters of the neighborhood story remained under the surface, talked about only behind closed doors, hidden in plain sight. It was hard to ignore the Vietnam War, women's rights, and all those hippies back then. Still, little was said about any of it. My cousin was in the Air Force and stationed at the Saigon Air Base. One Saturday night, my mother told her card club she believed America's involvement in the war was wrong and wished her nephew had never gone. She almost was not invited back. Not because of what she believed, she later told me, but because she expressed herself at all on something others would never have talked about. Luckily for me, the mandatory draft ended before I was 18 years old. But that decade had left its scars. The murders of JFK, RFK, MLK, the My Lai Massacre, Kent State. While my family and my neighbors said their Hail Marys and our Fathers at Sunday Mass, cheered for Roberto Clemente on the diamond in Forbes Field, and cooked burgers on charcoal grills on Saturday afternoons, there was always and always had been part of me then and now that wished everyone had talked more about all this. But that wasn't the makeup of my hometown, it seemed. Instead, it was to say little and don't make waves. Push what was unpleasant under the rug, in the closet, off to the clouds. Don't confront. Boys will be boys, girls will be girls. If you didn't talk about it, you didn't have to deal with it. Maybe it didn't exist. It would be a slow march out of a cultural conflict born from the residue of my parents' reticent generation toward a more open but more uncertain world. But I wonder now about all that was never addressed in those days, never shared, all those things we kept to ourselves, all that was left unsaid, all those apples that clanged on the metal roof that Mrs. McConaughey never questioned. Joey and I took our places once again against the porch railing, the bucket between us, and stared down our target. Let's do it together this time, I said. Overhand, right? Joey asked. I nodded. 1, 2, 3. The apples appeared to hang in the air before quickly descending toward the chimney. Joey's missed the opening entirely and bounded away, but mine nicked the concrete edge and hopped directly toward the patio roof. Bang! It took a bounce. Bang, bang, bang. We ran, leaving the buckets of apples on the porch, first to the backyard, but quickly changed our minds and darted to the walkway on the other side of the house. We waited and we listened. She's gonna come out now. I know she's gonna come out now, I said. I don't believe Mrs. McConaughey left her house that day at all. And during the several summers we used her home's chimney as a bullseye, the apple after apple crashed to the metal roof. Mrs. McConaughey never once emerged. She must have heard the loud clangs. She must have known all the apples from those errant throws were accumulating on the patio roof. She must have seen the rotting fruit from her upstairs window. But what about the occasional apple that did fall into that chimney? Didn't it show up in her fireplace? All those apples, dozens and dozens of them, all that crashing fruit. And Mrs. McConaughey never telephoned my parents, never confronted my friends or me, never said a single word.